Okay, so maybe you've just gotten a starter scenario from the Discord and you're wondering what the heck all this is, right? Like, because there's a lot of just jarbled text. I mean, it's actually just a test story going on. Or maybe you are trying to figure out what all of these categories do. Or maybe you're just trying to get a novel going and you don't know where to start and how to sort of blend it in with all this. This was all a great question asked by one of the commenters in my comment section, so please feel free if you have the time and or have a question that needs answering, drop it down below. I'm sure there's plenty of other novel AI users in here that'll help you, and I will try and answer anyone that I can with, as much as the knowledge that I can provide. But yeah, let's get into how to blend a novel and novel AI together. As far as I can tell, most of this stuff is just placeholder content until we can actually get into and change it. So this will be an example of your prompt. This will be an example of your memory. These are not necessary. Even this is just commented out symbols. Some people like to have these as just copyables so that you can just flavor text it up a little bit. But besides that, most of this here will be taken away whenever you do start. Okay, so to answer the commenter's question, we're going to go over each one of these in a little bit of detail. If you already know what you're doing here, you don't have to listen. I'll have chapters down below so that you can skip around just in case. But for now, let's start off with the attg, which is, of course, one of the most important parts of any story that you're going to be starting here. The attg is literally what you would type in if you were looking for your book in like a certain category, just like a Twitch category or anything else. If you wanted to find your book and it was categorized like this is what you're going to put in here. You have author, title, tags, and genre, and also a star rating system, but that's pretty new and kind of variable on its importance. Now then, while these are very important, you don't need all of them necessarily. If you do just want tags, title, and genre, tags and title are very strong. Tags and genre, you don't have to include every single one. Most of the time, if you do just want to have everything going, all you need is find an author in the category that you're looking for, right? If you're trying to do a thriller, you can do multiple authors, I'm pretty sure. Just separate them like you would the rest with a comma, add a few. But basically, the tags and the genre are some of the most important parts of this. The genre sort of defines like the whole overarching. Besides that, the tags also just give it labels of what you might see in here. Things like cyberpunk, gunfights, monsters, machines, cool things, anything that you're gonna include in here, anything like that, anything that isn't like a genre but it's gonna be showing up in there. It's very useful to just have a tag of it in so that it knows and can preface itself and sort of like pull from its knowledge base. The title will also play something, but it's more like if you have a series that's already generally made that you're sort of basing it off of, or you want to be set in that setting, then it's great to just pop that in there and give it that so that it knows a little bit more, or as much as it can, about what you're talking about, right? This is all about just giving the AI context of what you're doing. And besides that, the star rating, leave it at 4. You can fiddle around with it, play with it at like 3 or something, 3, 2. I hear anything from like 2 to 4 is the normal range. It doesn't really change too much, at least in my opinion. Maybe some people have had stronger experiences with it, but 4, I usually just leave it at 4. Now then, the next tab that we have here is Attributes Resource, which is another guide, but this one is actually for Silly Tavern, I think. Yeah, Silly Tavern, if we go over to it, this is how you make characters in Silly Tavern, which is, I believe, a little bit of a different style, but it seems to be using attribute. It does have the attribute list that I talked about in the last video, which is very, very useful. We'll get into that in a second because we're going to be going down to the characters tab. But a list like this of just categories for it will be very handy in a second. Would I recommend using this? Probably not. I would recommend using the guide from the last video, so please check that out if you do care. It'll be down in the description of that video if you do want to check it out. The Dramatis personae, I don't know if I butchered that, but I probably did. Anyway, it seems to be just a list of characters with the, just a basic general description of them for maybe party adventures. I'm not exactly sure about this one. This one is kind of new to me. I've only ever seen it in this Belverk's lore book, but it seems like, if we can tell from here, I do notice Gruner and the other elf, right? So it seems just to be an adventure party as labeled here. So I imagine if you're doing an adventuring party, just substitute these with your characters of choice in this sort of style, and it might help you along the way, or at least help the AI keep track of them along the way. And then locations. Location, I think both of these are just like general ideas for what you can do. It's not like a thing. These are disabled, you know what I mean? So these are just like ideas if you don't have any ideas right now. The Black Petals nightclub, producer's office, all of these are just locations that you could start a story in, and also possible plot situations, right? So same thing, just more ideas to give you to sort of get the ball rolling. Onto style. Style is another it's another pretty new thing, along with knowledge. Sometimes they're put together in the same brackets. I do not know if this one has knowledge activated, but generally this is pretty good. You can change the style to be anything that you do want it to. There are certain ones that are better. I don't know if there's a good list out there, but descriptive, detailed, evocative, visceral, characteristic, bantering, repartee is sort of, this is going to change the way that the words are put together a little bit, right? It's going to be a little bit more descriptive, detailed, all that good stuff. Again, you can change it to be shorter, you know, more brutal, stuff like that, more horror focused, I guess. You know, it's styling your story the way that you want it to be. But for a novel, this would probably be pretty good for most of them. The slop remover is actually just a thing for Erato. I think it's the Erato slop remover. It just doesn't have that in the title. This thing just basically puts a phrase bias on some of the more common words that Erato likes to use to stop it from spewing out a little bit of garbage. Basically, you'll just leave this alone. This is nothing that you have to worry about. It's just an Erato fix or a patch, basically. Most of that up there was more the general broad settings for the story, the overarching like style, the author title tags and description. Like if it was on a bookshelf, this would be like the front page, or where you'd find it, how would you find your novel. That's what you would fill in with all of that right there. But here we go, getting into the details of it. The characters, the attributes, abilities, magic, actions, right? So to use this, is all you want to do is just add character with a simple click. Do not just like make one by the entry down here. It won't have the settings for this category. You have to add them through this. As you can see, it has a slightly different stuff going on here. But basically, this is just to put it in order in the context. We'll take a look at the context after we get something going here. Basically, fill this in with whatever you want your character to do. Like I said, the last video went over a document with a lore book guide in there that was very, very good. I would recommend checking this out, but we will be using attribute style for the example, so I'm going to fill this out for you, at least for one character. I've been keeping my characters very short just to have a basic idea of them down, and then sort of letting it flow and guide and slowly just like fill out the character itself, right? I don't like keeping things too strict if they don't have to be too strict. If they don't have legs, then maybe it's important to put that they don't have legs. Okay, so following the guide that we have, the documentation from the last video, and a little bit from the Silly Tavern AI, it doesn't really matter. They both basically do the same thing. It's both attribution. Slightly different in the detail and comprehension for novelai AI specifically. But we have her name and a little bit of a description / title, aka you'll notice that I put this down here as an extra name for her, or an alias. Keep those in anything else that they might be called, you know, if it's like you're doing a character with a title or like a secondary name. Don't forget to drop them down below. Character, I mean type is character because it is a character. Gender, female, all of these are pretty much connect the dots, you know what I mean? I used Erato as an example. For instance, this is what Erato looks like if you've never seen her. But, you know, red hair, she's wearing roses in her hair, she's lean, strong, muscular, and she's playing a harp most of the time, right? So it makes sense that some of these are at least musical, dryad, magical, you know, things like that. Red dress, black bra, roses in hair, personality, bubbly, confident, calm. I didn't exactly know. I was just sort of guessing, but just fill in the gaps for your character. Then, if any of these words pop up in your story, then this will be added into context. Alternatively, you just turn always on, and then boom. If this is a prominent character, we'll get into main characters later. If this is a prominent character, it'll just always be on. They will always have a chance of popping in, as they say in this AI thing. Don't mention it, and it won't happen probably, or something like that. Like magic's abilities and actions. These all go about the same, but this is where a lot of people get a little bit confused. Maybe you're like, how do I do this in this style? Golden harp. Okay. The golden harp is presumably what Naruto is playing, and maybe this has a magical effect to it. Okay. I did just look at the guide. We're going to change this to just be an object, and we'll specify later on down the line that it is a magical object. So it's just basically a slight change there. The object is a harp now, the golden harp that she plays to soothe the souls of the dead or something like that, right? See, now here's when the fun stuff starts to come up. From the guide, there is, you know, multiple extra things that you can do. You can really get really creative with the categories for these items, objects, and locations and species and stuff like that, right? Use whatever word you want to sort of specify the category, and it will eventually figure it out. If not, just tinker around with it. You saw how we swapped around the title of it, and just swap it around until something works. You can also do things like curses, and even if you wanted to, since it's a musical object, you know, and this is just a thing that I just threw in there. The music is always going to be beautiful, right? You can just specify that, and there you go. Now, unfortunately, unlike characters, there's less of a already preset, well-known structure for these, or like very many categories, as you can see, or as you saw back here where it said, where did it say? It said it's organized logically, you know, follow the order, it's organized logically. There's less of this, which is why it makes it harder to do things in these categories. But presumably, if you know what you're doing already, like if you already have a story ready to go, you have your characters, your factions, your races, because all you're doing is plugging in and trying things out. You can test them individually, see if they work to your liking, and then if they don't, you just find another category to, or tweak it a little bit until it just fits just right. So trying to make new clothes, this also just gives it a reference, right? So let's say you wanted like Vi's gauntlets from League of Legends, right? So those big people, I guess they would be more of a weapon, but let's just call them a clothing item for now. But you know, just those heavy big fists, you would just describe that here. You would probably say something like, okay, so something like this would probably get you the results, at least for a set of power gauntlets, right? So there's just so much that you could fill in for here that I can't really go over every single use of it. And while I am going over each of these things, besides the characters, and don't get me wrong, some of the characters, another important thing to note as we go down here is some things will need to be activated together. And I bring this up as we get into species and races, because let's say that she was an elf, okay? We changed the species. Ooh. Just say, let's just say that, okay? We don't necessarily have to do that, but if this thing is a lore book on the elves, then we want it to base off of her, right? I mean, we want it to go at the same time. So adding the same tag to her, boom. Now if we bring in elf, let's just check the lore. Elf right here. Notice we've changed a few things. We've probably got a thing or two going, but elf and then elf. Now neither of those are always on, so I don't think we've actually written anything about it, but we did turn Erato. Wait, did we not turn Erato always on? But yeah, as you can see, it activated both of them. Whenever we put elf into the context, that is Erato and the elf thing, which we will slowly fill out, which is
but it's just important to make sure that your characters that are a race have it pop up with them, you know, because then it'll give context. So let's say that we had, you know, just an elf. But there we go. With this, now that it's filled out, you know, you have your character. Rato shows up as an elf. Wait a second, why does it not show up as an elf? This will just like reinforce it. It'll give a general background to your character if they are one of these races, and that's why we do it. We just want to have as much background and as much knowledge about what we're talking about. Also, what would be very nice to have in something like a race or even a character, really depends though if you are doing it based off of something, is setting. Setting, like Lord, say something like Lord of the Rings, you know, it provides a basis to the characters already, or to the race already. Now then, monsters are basically the same thing. Oh yeah, another thing before we go on. I did mention it earlier. I had a character that was like a Naga, and it kept saying legs, you know, so it was like walking around, walking, you know, legs, all that good stuff. If you do legs question mark, and you'll see this even in the novelai documentation. Let's go take a look at that. Okay, so yeah, I recently used this section, and this isn't a thing that I actually see very often. I really don't, even in some of the better guides and things. But the question mark, you can also add a question mark to a category to give the AI additional information about things it tends to get wrong. So I've done this with two characters so far. I think it was like a fish and a Naga. Okay, so the legs, you know, the legs things, I took that one from the Naga. So Naga, and then I did none, and then I said like Naga's lower half is only tail, is all tail, something like that. And that seemingly fixed it for that one section. I had one section where it was just like legs. I couldn't get a generation without legs. And then I did that, have a problem. Scrolled straight through. And I mean, I guess it worked pretty well because I didn't even notice it anymore. And that's generally what we do this for, just to, you know, set a precedent, or like make it so that you don't have to deal with it every single time. Yeah. So now that was just an important thing before we really get on into creatures, which, you know, might have a bunch of things. Basically you're just gonna set, I'm sort of gonna skip creatures because it's basically the same as races, but for monsters it's like an evil race, maybe, you know. I mean, there's literally nothing different that could go on. I could tell you how to make a minotaur, but it would just be a minotaur thing. It would be like appearance, fur, horns, all brawny, things like that. And then now then, flora and landmarks. Flora, landmarks, sublocations, and locations. These things are all going to play together actually pretty well. Oh yeah, for the elf thing, or the elf race thing, you can always just turn on cascading activation. Cascading activation works if we had errato with this word directly in the thing, and errato prompted up, then it would see elf there and it would immediately pop in because it reads the context instead of just the words on screen, or just looks for keys, basically. So that if errato was the only word and only errato showed up, errato, if it had elf in it, it would also activate this, which is a way of just, if you put elf in all of your characters, or like in all of your elven characters, then bada bing bada boom, you'd knock them all out in this one single thing. Or you could just add the key. It's really up to you on how tedious you want it to be, or which one you prefer, really, because you're gonna have to write elf a lot either way. Okay, so let's do these in a little bit of a reverse order. We're gonna start with location, and then we'll do sublocation, and then we'll do like a flora fauna type. Okay, we'll just use this so that I don't have to exactly explain everything over again. These are great examples here already. So the world here, okay, let's see, does it have anything else here though? Okay, no, it does not. It just has for the location. For the location, air seal. It seems to be the world that this story is starting on. And it, anyway, but let's try and set up a sub location for one of these places. Let's take Midgard, since it is a nation continent. Let's say that for Midgard, there was a, let's call it like Heimdall's retreat. Okay. And see right here where we mentioned Midgard. If we turn on Midgard cascading activation whenever we are talking about Heimdall's retreat, and it reads Midgard here, it will automatically step in and add Midgard directly to the context so that it knows that we're talking about either way. We could just add Midgard down here though, so that whenever this place is talked about, it already has the context of Midgard. Of course, you'll have your own style with this. My style is a little bit different than that style right there, so it's gonna look a little wonky whenever they're next to each other. Okay, something like that would probably work for a sublocation. Now then, for the flora and landmarks, this would probably be like your forest, your things, your location, your like biomes is what I'm trying to say. Your biomes. If Heimdall had a desert, let's just say, or a desert area in there. Okay, something like this would be, you know, a biome or a flora thing. At least this is what I would think to use it for. Of course, you're free to put in anything, really. Like, as long as you can think of it and it makes sense to go in this sort of section. As you can see, I've also added Midgard in here once again. This basically just creates a loop of everything working together, which is what we really like around here. Okay, now this is another already pretty pre-filled thing, but this can be just about anything that you want, right? So a few of these they've already put in here, like traits for your characters. If you want the AI to know a little bit more about what you mean about one character being blind, let's just take that because we're looking at it. If it was blind, then this will give it more context. I did actually try this with one character and it seemed to work pretty good, you know. Let's see. I think it still did every now and then mess up, but other than that, it went way better than without this. So this definitely does help a good bit. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, you can add these little traits. You can add, I don't know. There's a lot of things that you could add in here that would help out a story. But oh yeah, like character, like whole entire character personalities or cliches, I guess. So things like yandere, anything. I mean, this is sort of meta, but you know, it adds more context. It adds more understanding, right? And then this, of course, we went over pretty well in the last video. The lore of lore books, it just tells you, it tells the AI exactly what we just did with every single one of those, right? This thing tells it exactly why we have this separator by the dashes, you know, what it is. You're just going to want to leave this alone. Leave it on, leave it alone. The rules, change these to fit your own experiences, right? We went over this section a lot, so check that last video out. And for that, I probably will not go over it too much. I'm going to give you a little bit of a glossary gloss over, but that he does have the first person, second person, third person, a text adventure. Right, this is the chat version, and then you have the text adventure down here and prose experiment. These are basically just different styles, right? The first person and the third person. If you want, you could probably add a secondary person. I don't know if second person is already in one of these, but I think this might be. What is this? Oh yeah, this is just an example. He does tell you exactly what you can do with these, right? So you can add extra rules, or you can just keep which ones on and off, right? Make sure that if you're not using it, then boom, turn it off. This one right here seems to just be telling it how to write better. As you can see, we can see more of the the slop remover by the woven tapestry, stark reminder of the contrast. More of just trying to get away from the most generic phrases that this thing will spit out, so that you'll have more vibrant and flavorful text, right? But besides that, the rules are something you set on your own, and like I said, it can be things like the story is set in the past and you don't have any electricity, right? Or it could be set in the future and everything is sort of very modern and contemporary, right? Just explain it out to the AI what your setting is, whatever rules you have for it. Now that probably will not happen, but here we go. We have the main character first person, main character second person, main character third female, third male, and we're just going to turn on third male, and we're going to take a look into it. Now this is where the main character from or the main character, this is basically where you explain exactly what your main character is. Otherwise, okay, something like that will just set up another basic summary, but this is more like a meta overview of the character. You know, if you already know sort of the overarching character, and this is where you'll put it. The clothes. Okay, something like this will do fine for the clothing. We already have sort of discussed this a lot since we did make a character sheet for her, but it doesn't hurt to have this, because this will put some extra biases on it. Any secrets, you can just add that there. And any sort of, I guess, just the nude model by itself, you know, it'll just be the muscular physique and all that good stuff. I'll let you guys handle that. But there we go. We have now completely went over every single category in Belverk's things and explained a little bit about each of them, how to set them up, how to make them interact with each other. Yeah, another important thing to address is probably to change the name here to the character or your main character yourself, so that it will not address it. I do not know regex myself, so I think this is what this is. I don't know if it's already set to avoid it if Mary is no longer in there, but just changing that to Erato should work. Once you have all that stuff just locked away in a lore book somewhere, right, then you can change this. The tale can now, instead of just being a fantasy, walk along with an adventuring party into a horror scenario, a thriller, is just change it to what you want it to be. And this is more of like an overarching thing, right? Like, it's still just the memory. Memory is a thing that you can slowly change over time and it'll be fine. You won't really want to fiddle with the lore book things too much. This is where you'll be fiddling with it more as you continue on the story. Make a huge advancement in something, add it to the context, or add it to the memory, and then just keep on going. The next part of the comment says that he has a 26 chapter outline ready to go, which would be absolutely perfect for, well, if you could like summarize it into chapters, or like we can do it in chapters. We can do it in chapters. That is one way to do it. But he also has a main and secondary character list. So let's go over that first. For the main and secondary characters, as we just saw, the main character would go in here, in whatever tense you're wanting. Fill this out as best you can, and then whatever is necessary, you just bring that in there. And then you put the characters like we just showed in here. This is, this is where all of your characters are basically going to go. Don't forget to actually add them with the plus sign though. Add them in this style if you can. If not, you can always just like duplicate this, by the way, before you really start messing around with it. Or even after, you can just like paste it in here, but you can just make a duplicate and you can try and see if just basic prose works. Basic prose just means the word description. So instead of like Erato the weaver of prose, species elf, right? If I just writ all this out in a paragraph, that'll work sometimes. I don't know if it'll work as well. It seems like attributes is generally the consensus in being the best, but it's worth a shot every now and then, right? If you do just want to try it out. I mean, I've had good stories work with just prose descriptions, just paragraph for a character, and then, you know, continue on with paragraphs for all of this stuff, right? So I'd say give it a try if you can, if it's not too tedious. But yeah, we knocked those out. If you're wanting to work with this, if you're wanting to like, you've got like an outline, so maybe you're wanting to like walk through it with some of the characters, I would say, you know, okay, let's just say that this is a whole chapter done. Like we've written down the first chapter, we've continued until we're ready and set to go. The next thing you would do is just go, you know, a new chapter basically, and you can call this chapter like whatever, like New Dawn, you know, basic chapter name, add that little thing there. And as you can see, because we did do this earlier, we have it should be in the lore books explaining exactly what that does. Let's see. Okay, this one right here, the text adventure, has this thing. Words inside brackets are used to convey narrative instructions. This includes things like writing style or upcoming events. So if you just want to like take this rule right here and put it into the whichever one you're using, it lines up perfectly here because it's didn't even grab that part. But 3, you know, and then words inside brackets, bada bing, bada boom. There you go. That works. That works, and that'll just be how you switch through switch through chapters. Now, of course, whenever you're writing an actual novel, I'm not a novel writer, by the way, but I can tell you that long stories are a little bit rougher to do because there is a context, and it depends on what account level that you have, right? So my account level right now is Opus, which has the full 8K memory, 8K context, but that's basically what context is. That's this thing right here. You'll see this bar fill up. Thing is, whenever the bar is full up, it doesn't mean that the story is over, that you have to end it there or anything. You can continue going. It will just start taking away from the story. It'll start like slowly pulling the information, the story that it keeps. That is also why we keep these things on tags, so that they are not always taking up all this much space, right? Be careful of the always active things that you have on. But now, besides that, like I said, the context will run out of memory eventually, and then it'll start calling just the story side. All of the lorebook side will have some reserve tokens, and it will usually keep some of it in here. I don't know if it'll keep all of this in here, but you will see whenever you get to the end there that it'll slowly start calling it off. That does not mean that it does not that it will just forget everything that you did once it reaches the end either. It'll just, you know, keep it going. It might forget some things, is what I'm saying. That's why we have things like memory, which you can slowly update, and then eventually, if you slowly update this thing, like if we say, you know, watch out for them keywords in the memory whenever they're cascading, by the way, but this is, you know, just an example. Let's say that we get done with the New Dawn chapter, right? And then once that you fill it in with all the information that you got there, the important sort of cliff notes, just to keep it rolling. You know what I mean? Don't be too specific with every single thing that happened, but, you know, did he pick up a new follower, a new object? Did the item break, like did the golden heart break? Something major happen? And just continue on. You can always allude to these things too, since you do have a chapter outline, right? If you would like to sort of lead it on to sort of help it, like, will they find another member of the party in the blue whale, you know, and that'll be the next chapter, the blue whale, you know. So now, basically, it does say, he does ask what would be changed over time, right? So if you're not getting what you want out of it, I would recommend maybe copying and pasting your lore book at least in to a new story, and then just continuing on from there, and then like copying and pasting your memory over, and then, you know, making a new story at that chapter. If your thing is like really huge, I do not know how long it's going to be, but if it does start like really forgetting some important parts, and or you just want a tighter experience, just copy it over. Or you can copy your lore book by downloading it right here, and then you can upload it to another one, and then you can just copy this and paste this over. So you can just do that, and then you'll have basically a fresh new context full of your things. But now, should you update the characters? Yeah, probably. You should update the characters throughout, depending on how they change, slowly changing, you know, anything that happens. So let's say that Erato's hair turns from red to green because maybe she ate a mushroom. I have no idea. Then we would just change that there. Just keep it up to date and keep her going. Yeah, slowly, you can just slowly change their traits from more friendly ones into more evil ones. That'll work too. The 26 chapter outline is only the first 3 novel breakdowns, so there will be many chapters needed to tell the whole story. That sounds like a lot. That sounds like a huge amount, which means I would probably it really is up to you how you want to do it. You could do it all in one, like, no doubt. You could just continue and continue and continue and build and build and build. Do be careful with the context though. I mean, especially if you're on like a tablet context. At some point you probably want to disable some characters that are like, okay, these ones are sitting out and they're not coming back for a long time. Walked through how to fill in just about each and every category, what they do. At this point, I would say, guys, feel free to help each other in the comments down below. I'm sure that some of you do longer stories than I do. This is probably a longer story than I will probably ever do. I like to keep it short and concise most of the time. Maybe every now and then get into like the thousands. If there is, you know, some things that I missed or forgot about, let me know. I will either answer them in the comments or make a new video going over it if it is that egregious. Is this the way that you use the lore book starter pack? I would hope so, because if not, then I'm very confused at how you're using the thing. But yeah, see you in the next one. Prince League out. Thank you for the comment, and yeah, see you guys in the next one.